Richard Crawford watches Bryn's small fingers trace the earth watercolor set he'd given her, her ridged forehead furrowing in concentration as she adds another stroke to her painting. The gesture strikes him as both innocent and rebellious, a young Klingon choosing art over combat on her final day at the Diplomatic Exchange Academy. Through the transparent walls of his classroom aboard Earth's primary orbital station, the blue marble of humanity's homeworld rotates against the backdrop of stars. The year 2157 marks the third anniversary of Earth's unexpected victory over the Klingon invasion force, a triumph that led to this controversial integration program. At his desk, Richard reviews the day's lesson plan while observing his unique class. 20 alien students occupy the adaptive seats, their forms ranging from serpentine to crystalline, but his attention keeps returning to Bryn. At 8 years old, she stands barely half the height of typical Klingon children her age. Her father, Commander Kavor, once led the failed assault on Earth's defenses. Now he serves as an unwilling participant in the peace accord, his presence a testament to humanity's tactical prowess. The other Klingon students cluster together, shooting disapproving glances at Bryn's corner workspace, where human art supplies scatter across her desk. Their parents have filed numerous complaints about Richard's teaching methods, particularly his encouragement of weak, human cultural practices. But Richard recognized something in Bryn from her first day, a sensitivity and artistic talent that transcended her warrior heritage. Richard approaches Bryn's desk, noting the careful way she combines traditional Klingon war poetry with Earth-style watercolors. She spent weeks on this secret project, working through lunches and after classes. The painting captures something profound, a bridge between their species' values, expressed through the eyes of a child who sees beauty in both. Commander Kavor's reassignment notice arrived yesterday. He's taking Bryn to a distant colony, away from what he terms corrupting human influences. The commander's message made his position clear. Earth's impact on his daughter threatens their cultural identity, their warrior spirit. Richard straightens his teaching robes, preparing to start the day's final lesson. The weight of his role settles on his shoulders. His approach to teaching Bryn, his willingness to nurture her artistic side, could either help heal the rift between their species or deepen the Klingons' resistance to human cultural exchange. As he moves to the front of the classroom, the farewell gift hidden in Bryn's desk represents more than just a student's appreciation. It embodies the potential for understanding between two vastly different worlds. Richard moved toward the front of the classroom, but paused as movement caught his eye. Bryn's small fingers darted beneath her desk, adjusting something wrapped in cloth. Her ridged forehead creased with anxiety as she glanced between the hidden package and the classroom's chronometer. The afternoon sun streamed through the orbital station's reinforced windows, casting long shadows across the adaptive seating units. Richard noticed Bryn's growing restlessness, her hands constantly moving beneath her desk, while she attempted to maintain the composed demeanor expected of a Klingon child. The classroom door slid open with a soft hiss. Admiral James Holmes stepped in, his crisp uniform bearing the marks of his distinguished service during the Earth-Klingon conflict. The other students straightened in their seats, serpentine forms coiling tighter and crystalline bodies refracting light in patterns of respect. "Continue your lesson, Professor Crawford," Holmes said, taking a position near the back wall. His presence carried the weight of the peace treaty he'd brokered 3 years ago. Richard had barely opened his mouth to begin when heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor. Commander Kavor's massive frame filled the doorway, his scarred face bearing the same stern expression he'd worn since the day of his defeat. His eyes narrowed at the sight of the watercolor set on Bryn's desk. "Class is dismissed," Richard announced, his carefully planned farewell ceremony crumbling before Kavor's imposing presence. The alien students filed out, some slithering, others floating, while security officers outside the door shifted closer. "We depart for Borith now," Kavor announced, his deep voice resonating through the classroom. "Gather your belongings, Bryn." Bryn's hands trembled as she reached beneath her desk. In her haste, several paintbrushes clattered to the floor, rolling across the deck plating. The sound drew a sharp intake of breath from Kavor, his hand instinctively moving to his hip where his decayed tog would have hung in years past. Admiral Holmes stepped forward, positioning himself between Richard and Kavor. "Commander, surely we can spare a moment for proper farewells. Your daughter has spent 3 years under Professor Crawford's guidance." Bryn stood, clutching her cloth-wrapped package. Her small form seemed to shrink beneath her father's disapproving glare, but her chin lifted in a gesture Richard recognized from countless art sessions, the same perseverance that helped her perfect her brush strokes. "Teacher," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She approached Richard's desk, the package trembling in her hands. The traditional Klingon ceremonial cloth bore marks of careful folding and refolding, evidence of meticulous preparation. Kavor's boots scraped against the deck as he stepped forward. "Bryn." Admiral Holmes raised his hand. "Commander, please, let her speak." The security officers outside shifted their stance, hands near their weapons. Richard kept his eyes on Bryn, noting how she stood straighter despite her father's looming presence. She began unwrapping the package, her small fingers working carefully at the cloth's intricate folds. The tension in the room built with each layer she removed, Kavor's breathing growing heavier, Admiral Holmes watching with diplomatic intensity, and Richard holding perfectly still as his student prepared to reveal her final project. The cloth fell away to reveal a long scroll of traditional Klingon battle parchment, its surface adorned with intricate watercolor scenes that caught the orbital station's artificial lighting. Richard's breath caught as he recognized the distinctive texture of the material, the same type used to record the Empire's greatest victories. Bryn unfurled the scroll with careful movements. The artwork stretched across her desk, cascading over the edge in a fusion of Earth and Klingon artistic styles. The central image depicted Richard demonstrating proper brush technique, while a bat'leth hung prominently on the wall behind them, both instruments of expression given equal prominence in the composition. Kavor surged forward, his massive hand reaching for the scroll. "This is what you waste our sacred materials on." His voice carried the edge of barely suppressed fury. "Wait." The word rang through the classroom, accompanied by hurried footsteps. Dr. Marcus Hawthorne entered, his weathered features animated with scholarly interest. The cultural anthropologist's eyes fixed on the scroll, scanning the Klingon calligraphy that framed each scene. "Commander Kavor," Hawthorne said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "your daughter has done something remarkable here. This isn't defacement, it's evolution." Admiral Holmes moved closer, studying the artwork. "Explain, Doctor." "These characters," Hawthorne traced the air above the scroll, careful not to touch it, "follow the exact form used in the Chronicles of Khalis. The same brushstrokes that recorded the Battle of Kamchi." He pointed to a particularly detailed scene. "Here, she's depicted the defense of Taigakar, but the watercolor technique makes the energy weapons visible in a way traditional Klingon art never could." The click of boots announced another arrival. Subcommander Elrel stepped into the classroom, her sleek diplomatic uniform marking her as part of the new generation of Klingon leadership. Her eyes narrowed as she examined the scroll. "The doctor speaks truth," Elrel said, her voice carrying the authority of her position. "This young warrior has found a way to make our victories comprehensible to other species without sacrificing their power." She turned to Kavor. "How many non-Klingons truly understand the glory of our battle records? Yet here, any being with eyes can see our strength." Kavor's hand remained suspended above the scroll, his fingers flexing. Richard watched Bryn's face as she looked up at her father, her small form straight back despite her fear. The Federation Council has been seeking new ways to present Klingon cultural achievements, Admiral Holmes said. This could be exactly what we need. Dr. Hawthorne nodded enthusiastically. The integration of styles mirrors the integration of our peoples. Notice how she's maintained the traditional proportions while incorporating Earth techniques for perspective and light. Kavor's eyes traced each scene, lingering on the details of battles he himself had fought in. His daughter had captured the arc of disruptor fire, the clash of blade against blade, in ways the old methods never quite managed. The colonies will see this, Kavor asked, his voice rougher than before. If you permit it, Elrel responded. Your daughter could open new paths of understanding between our peoples. Richard remained beside Bryn, watching as the diplomatic implications of her artwork unfurled like the scroll itself. The security officers maintained their positions, but their stance had relaxed slightly as the conversation shifted from confrontation to cultural exchange. Bryn reached out and touched one corner of her work, where she had painted the Earth hanging in space alongside Con OS. I wanted to show both worlds, Father, like the stories you tell me of battle, but in a way my human classmates could feel too. Kavor's hand finally descended, but instead of seizing the scroll, his fingers traced the Klingon characters with unexpected gentleness. Each stroke of calligraphy told a story of combat and honor, now illuminated by his daughter's innovative technique. The orbital station's rotation brought Earth into view through the classroom windows, its blue surface reflecting off the scroll's carefully preserved surface. The artwork between them had become more than a student's farewell gift. It represented a possibility none of them had considered until this moment. Subcommander Elrel stepped closer to Kavor, her voice pitched for his ears alone. Commander, we must consider the diplomatic implications of your next actions carefully. Kavor withdrew his hand from the scroll, his eyes lingering on the intricate details of each brushstroke. The tension in his shoulders eased as he leaned closer to examine a particular battle scene rendered in subtle blues and deep crimsons. This formation, he muttered, tracing the air above the painted starships. The Battle of Saul's Edge. The classroom door slid open again, revealing Master Sergeant Marcus Reynolds. The security chief's weathered face registered immediate recognition as he approached the scroll at Admiral Holmes's gesture. Those are the exact positions, Reynolds said, pointing to a cluster of Federation vessels arranged in a distinctive pattern. Our third defensive line, just before the Klingon fleet executed their pincer movement. His finger moved to another section. Look here, she's captured the exact moment when both sides realized they'd reached tactical deadlock. Elrel activated her data tablet with practiced efficiency. The holographic display illuminated the air above Bryn's artwork, projecting ancient Klingon battle chronicles alongside it. Observe these historical records from the time of Kahless, she said, manipulating the display to highlight specific details. The same integration of tactical documentation and artistic representation. Dr. Hawthorne's fingers flew across the classroom's central console. The main viewscreen filled with comparative images from Earth's cultural database. The similarities are remarkable, he said, highlighting sections of ancient Klingon art that matched Bryn's technique. This isn't just artistic expression, it's a return to the warrior chronicler tradition that helped build the Empire. Reynolds stepped closer to one particular scene in Bryn's scroll. The light patterns from the shield impacts, I've never seen them captured so accurately. We could use this in tactical training. Kavor's expression shifted as he looked between the ancient chronicles and his daughter's work. His hand moved to touch the scroll again, this time with deliberate care. You learned these traditional forms. Professor Crawford helped me study the old war chronicles, Bryn said, standing straighter. He showed me how to mix the paints to match the colors described in Kahless's own records. Admiral Holmes moved to the classroom's communication panel. The Earth Diplomatic Archive needs to see this, and the Klingon Military Museum. He paused, looking at Kavor. With your permission, Commander. Richard watched Kavor's face as the Klingon warrior studied a particular section of the scroll, a detailed rendering of two ships, one Federation and one Klingon, their weapons locked in a precise dance of tactical expertise. The artwork captured not just the battle itself, but the respect between worthy opponents. The old methods, Kavor said, his voice rough with understanding. We had forgotten them. He turned to Elrel. How many other warrior traditions have we lost to time? Elrel manipulated her tablet again, bringing up more historical records. The warrior chroniclers were once as respected as our greatest battle commanders. Their art preserved not just the fact of victory, but its essence. Bryn reached for her brush set, selecting one with careful precision. Father, may I show you? This brush type matches the ones described in the Chronicles of Khalis. She held it up, demonstrating the angle. See how it captures the arc of disruptor fire, just as the ancient texts describe. The security officers by the door watched with professional interest as Reynolds moved closer to examine another battle scene. The tactical officer's presence added weight to each technical detail Bryn had captured in her work. Admiral Holmes stepped back from the communication panel. The archive curators are standing by. They're particularly interested in the historical connections Dr. Hawthorne has identified. The sunlight streaming through the windows shifted, casting new shadows across the scroll's surface. The artwork seemed to come alive under the changing light, each scene revealing new layers of detailed tactical formations flowing into artistic expression, military precision, enhanced by creative interpretation. Richard observed as Kavor's attention turned to a small detail in the corner of the scroll, a series of Klingon characters written in the traditional style, but illuminated with a technique that made them appear to float above the surface. The commander's fingers hovered over the text, recognition dawning in his eyes. These characters, Kavor said, his voice softening as he translated the illuminated text. They tell of the Battle of Tygakar, but there is life in them. The classroom door slid open again, admitting Captain James Sullivan. The station's chief historian hurried forward, his arms laden with data tablets and old-style paper books. Commander Kavor, Sullivan called, setting his materials on a nearby desk. You need to see this. He activated the first tablet, projecting images of Earth's medieval manuscripts into the air. Look at these battle chronicles from human history. The projection showed ornately illustrated pages depicting armored knights in combat, their weapons and formations carefully documented in gold leaf and vibrant pigments. Next to them, Japanese scrolls unveiled scenes of samurai warfare rendered in delicate brushstrokes. These warrior cultures, Sullivan explained, documented their battles through art, just as your daughter has done. The samurai were both warriors and artists, recording their victories through painting and poetry. Colonel Viktor Petrov stepped into the growing gathering, his military attaché uniform drawing Kavor's attention. Consider Winston Churchill, Petrov said, pulling up historical images on the classroom's display. He commanded armies and painted landscapes. His art hangs in museums alongside records of his military victories. Dr. Hawthorne's console chimed. The anthropologist's eyes widened as he examined the incoming data. Commander, you'll want to see this. He transferred the feed to the main screen, revealing images of newly excavated ruins on Kano S. These artifacts were discovered at an ancient warrior academy. The earliest Klingon warriors used artistic renderings for battle planning and recording their victories. Kavor moved closer to the screen, his expression intent as he studied the ancient artifacts. Bryn followed, her small hand touching the edge of her scroll where it mirrored the archaeological findings. The corridor outside filled with curious faces as passing alien delegations noticed the gathering. Ambassador Richard Holmes entered, his diplomatic credentials clearing a path through the crowd. "Brother," Admiral Holmes greeted him, "you're just in time." The ambassador examined Bryn's scroll, his experienced diplomatic eye taking in every detail. "This is exactly what we've been seeking. A bridge between cultures that honors both traditions." Kavor's communicator chirped with priority clearance. The message from the Klingon Cultural Ministry scrolled across its screen in Imperial script. Elrel read it over his shoulder, her satisfied nod confirming its significance. "The Ministry wishes to preserve this technique," Elrel announced. "They recognize it as a revival of lost traditions." Master Sergeant Reynolds had produced a tactical analyzer, scanning Bryn's battle scenes with professional precision. "The ship formations are tactically perfect," he reported, marking specific points on the scroll with holographic annotations. "Each maneuver is documented with military accuracy." "Doctor." Marcus Zhang pushed through the crowd, his xenoanthropology equipment already recording. "The fusion of styles is unprecedented," he said, scanning the growing collection of historical records surrounding Bryn's work. "This represents a genuine cultural synthesis." Richard watched as his classroom transformed into an impromptu cultural center. Bryn stood beside her father, explaining each scene with growing confidence as Kavor's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. "Here," Bryn pointed to a particularly detailed section, "I used the traditional warpaint pigments you brought from Con OS, but applied them with Earth techniques to show the plasma trails from the ships." Ambassador Holmes activated his diplomatic channel. "We need to establish a formal framework for this. A cultural exchange program focusing on military history and artistic expression." The crowd at the door had grown, forcing the security officers to establish a perimeter. Through the window, Earth continued its stately rotation, its oceans reflecting the same blues Bryn had used to capture the Battle of Saul's Edge. Kavor touched the scroll once more, this time with decisive purpose. "My daughter," he said, his voice carrying the weight of tradition, "has given voice to our victories in a way that honors the old ways while forging new ones." Dr. Hawthorne's console continued to fill with incoming data as more historical parallels emerged. The classroom hummed with the energy of discovery as human and Klingon officials gathered around the scroll, each finding their own connection to the artistic fusion before them. The gathering's attention shifted as General Marcus Stone strode through the classroom doorway, his xenoarchaeology team following with hovering display units. The general's presence commanded immediate respect, but his eyes focused on the scroll with scholarly intensity rather than military bearing. "Commander Kavor," Stone said, activating the nearest display unit, "what you're seeing isn't just artistic innovation, it's recovery." The holographic projection filled the air with three-dimensional images of weathered Klingon artifacts, their surfaces etched with familiar patterns. Dr. Elena Martinez stepped forward, her fingers dancing across her datapad. The artifact's images aligned themselves beside Bryn's scroll, revealing striking similarities in composition and technique. "These were uncovered at a military training facility on Boreth," she explained, enlarging specific sections. "The tactical diagrams match your daughter's style with remarkable precision." Kavor's eyes narrowed as he studied the projected images. "Boreth," he said, glancing at Bryn, "our new posting." Martinez manipulated the display, highlighting specific battle formations in both the artifacts and Bryn's artwork. "She's independently recreated a documentation method that disappeared from Klingon military records centuries ago. These warrior artists combined strategic planning with historical preservation." Master Sergeant Reynolds activated his tactical analyzer, projecting its readings over a section of Bryn's scroll. "This formation," he said, indicating a complex arrangement of ships, We implemented it during the Antares engagement, saved hundreds of lives on both sides. His finger traced the artistic rendering of plasma trails. The way she's captured the movement, it reveals defense weaknesses we hadn't identified in our official reports. A new hologram materialized in the center of the classroom. Commander Krell, governor of Boreth. His deep-set eyes examined the scroll through the projection. The Empire will provide full resources for studying this connection, he declared. We require facilities, instructors, a joint research center, Admiral Holmes interjected, stepping into Krell's field of view. Combining Earth's artistic expertise with Klingon military scholarship. Colonel Harrison Webb pushed through the crowd, his archive director's insignia glinting. This artwork requires immediate classification as a historical document, he announced, examining the tactical annotations Reynolds had added. These insights into both sides' strategies, it's unprecedented. Consider the diplomatic implications, Ambassador Holmes said, addressing both Krell's hologram and Kavor. A cultural preservation initiative, allowing continued artistic development within warrior traditions. Dr. Zhang's recording devices hummed as they captured the scene. The xenoanthropologist moved methodically around the gathering, documenting the spontaneous cooperation between species that had so recently been in conflict. Bryn touched a section of her scroll, drawing attention to a particular battle scene. I used the traditional war pigments here, she explained to Commander Krell's hologram. The ones from the Chronicles of Kalis. The facilities on Boreth will be ready within days, Krell responded, his projection displaying schematics for the proposed research center. We've already identified suitable locations within the military training complex. Richard watched as his classroom transformed into something beyond a diplomatic meeting space. It had become the birthplace of a new understanding between cultures. The scroll that had begun as a student's farewell gift now served as a bridge between warrior traditions and artistic expression. The remote mentoring programs are already being configured, Admiral Holmes said, reviewing data on his tablet. Similar art-based education initiatives could be established on multiple Klingon worlds. Kavor's hand rested on his daughter's shoulder as they studied the ancient artifact's images. The tension in his posture had transformed into something else: pride, tempered with understanding. The warrior artist traditions of his people hadn't been lost. They had been waiting to be rediscovered. Through the classroom windows, Earth continued its silent rotation, witness to another step in the evolution of two cultures learning to see themselves in each other's traditions. The classroom's atmosphere shifted as Fleet Admiral Marcus Davidson strode through the doorway, his command presence drawing all eyes. His senior staff fanned out behind him, their uniforms pristine against the casual academic setting of Richard's classroom. "Don't let me interrupt," Davidson said, his weathered features focusing on Bryn's scroll. "Lieutenant Commander Holmes, if you would." Sarah Holmes stepped forward, her analytical equipment projecting a complex overlay across the artwork. Battle recordings materialized beside each of Bryn's painted scenes, the movements of ships matching with uncanny precision. "These patterns," Sarah explained, manipulating the holographic display, "they're not just artistic interpretation." Her fingers traced a series of ship formations in the Battle of Saul's Edge. Bryn has captured movement predictions that our tactical computers missed. Kavor leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as Sarah overlaid actual combat telemetry onto his daughter's artwork. The painted vessel's paths matched the real engagement data with startling accuracy. Here, Master Sergeant Reynolds pointed to a particular formation. This defensive pattern saved the 7th Fleet at Antares. He activated his tactical analyzer, highlighting specific elements in Bryn's brushwork. She's documented vulnerabilities our after-action reports never identified. The room's attention shifted as an emergency transport signature materialized. General Katar appeared, his imposing frame dominating the space. The Klingon general's reputation for opposing human cooperation preceded him, causing several officers to stiffen. Katar moved to the scroll, his expression unreadable. His fingers traced a series of intricate patterns in Bryn's battle scenes. "These formations," he said, his voice carrying across the nonchalant room. "They mirror the sacred meditation patterns of Kalas." Dr. Hawthorne's fingers flew across his console, pulling up historical records. "The connection runs deeper," he said, projecting images of ancient Earth and Kano-S battle formations. Both species carried their ground warfare doctrines into space. Bryn's artwork reveals the parallel evolution. Ambassador Holmes stepped forward, seizing the moment. "General Katar, Admiral Davidson consider establishing a joint cultural military academy on Boreth, not just a posting, but a foundation for combining our martial traditions through art." Davidson studied the tactical overlays, his expression thoughtful. "The military applications are clear." Lieutenant Commander Holmes, prepare a full analysis for both command structures. Katar's gaze locked onto Bryn. The child sees what warriors forget to look for. He turned to Kavor. "Your daughter's gift serves the Empire in ways we never anticipated." Sarah Holmes adjusted her holographic display, highlighting new tactical elements. Each brushstroke contains information about ship behavior, crew psychology, even battlefield dynamics. She's transcribed military doctrine into artistic expression. Dr. Zhang's recording devices word as he documented the proceedings, moving between the growing clusters of officers and analysts examining different sections of the scroll. Federation and Klingon tactical specialists huddled together, pointing out details that bridged their distinct military philosophies. Colonel Webb activated the archive protocols, his classification systems processing the tactical data emerging from Bryn's artwork. "The historical implications are staggering," he said, marking specific sections for priority analysis. Richard watched as Bryn stood beside her father, explaining the techniques she'd used to capture each battle's essence. Kavor's earlier confusion had transformed into understanding, as he recognized elements of traditional Klingon combat meditation in his daughter's brushwork. Sarah's holographic overlays continued to reveal new patterns, each discovery drawing more attention from the assembled military leaders. The classroom had become a nexus of tactical analysis and cultural exchange, centered around the artistic insights of a young girl who saw war through different eyes. The gathering expanded as more senior officials arrived, drawn by the mounting significance of Bryn's work. Through the windows, Earth's oceans reflected the same light that had inspired her depiction of the Battle of Saul's Edge, where human and Klingon ships had once clashed, and where her art now united their military traditions in unexpected ways. Commander Marcus Harrison burst through the classroom doors, datapad in hand, his eyes bright with academic intensity. "Admiral Davidson, you need to see this analysis." He navigated through a series of holographic displays showing Bryn's artistic progression throughout the academic year. "Look at the evolution of her technique." The images floating before them tracked Bryn's development from her earliest academy works to the present. Harrison manipulated the display, highlighting specific elements. Her artistic growth mirrors both Earth's classical artistic developmental stages and traditional Klingon warrior training phases. These parallels shouldn't exist, but they do. Kavor stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the progression of images. "I require access to my daughter's complete portfolio." "I've preserved every piece," Richard said, accessing the classroom's secure storage system. A wall panel slid open, revealing dozens of carefully archived works. Captain Thomas Anderson entered, medical scanner humming. "Commander Harrison's findings align with our medical data." He projected a series of neural maps. "These are Bryn's routine examination scans. The areas associated with combat reflexes and spatial awareness show increased activity during her artistic sessions. Dr. James Wilson pushed through the gathering crowd, his military training academy insignia catching the light. These neural patterns match what we've observed in our most effective combat instructors. He activated his own display, overlaying training protocols with Brin's neural data. We could integrate artistic expression into standard combat training for both species. Colonel Marcus Reynolds moved to examine one of Brin's earlier works. His fingers traced the flowing lines of a battle formation. These brush strokes. He turned to Kavor. Your daughter has unconsciously incorporated advanced battle meditation techniques into her painting style. Kavor's expression shifted as he studied the piece Reynolds indicated. The ancient forms of Lakta meditation, but she has never been trained. Look at this, General Katar said, his voice cutting through the murmur of discussion. He held up one of Brin's first paintings from the academy. These markings along the border, they match victory markers from the age of Khalas. Warriors would paint these to claim conquered territories. Commander Eric Larson activated the room's main holographic projector. We can apply her visualization technique to our combat simulators. A battle scenario materialized, rendered in Brin's distinctive style. The intuitive nature of her artwork could revolutionize how we train bridge crews. Ambassador Holmes seized the moment. Borth Military Academy needs a dedicated cultural exchange wing. We can use Brin's methods as the foundation for a new training approach. Dr. Hawthorne's console chimed. The parallels extend further. He projected images of ancient Klingon artifacts alongside Brin's recent works. Her techniques align with recently discovered military documents from the early Empire. She's independently rediscovered their documentation methods. Sarah Holmes adjusted her tactical overlay, incorporating the new data. Each piece shows progressive refinement in battlefield visualization. The combat applications are significant. Brin moved between the displayed works, her fingers trailing over the earliest pieces. I painted this one after my first combat simulation, she said, indicating a swirling representation of a destroyer squadron's maneuvers. The movements felt like brush strokes in my mind. Richard watched as his classroom transformed into a nexus of military innovation and cultural exchange. The gathered officials clustered around different pieces of Brin's portfolio, each finding new connections between art and warfare, tradition and progress. Kavor stood before his daughter's first academy painting, his expression thoughtful. The victory markers along its borders glowed under General Katar's analysis light, their ancient significance bridging centuries of warrior tradition. Commander Harrison's developmental charts continued to fill the air, each new correlation strengthening the connection between artistic growth and warrior training. Through the classroom windows, Earth's oceans reflected the light of a new understanding between two cultures bound by the art of warfare. The room's analytical atmosphere shifted as Master Chief Marcus Davidson Jr. strode through the doorway, his presence drawing attention from the assembled officers. His eyes locked onto Brin's artwork, moving past the obvious tactical patterns to study the varying depths of paint application. The thickness variations, he said, activating his handheld scanner. They're not random. The device's beam swept across the scroll's surface, generating a complex three-dimensional model. Look at this. The holographic display transformed the painted battle scenes into detailed tactical projections. Each variation in paint depth corresponded to specific combat data velocity vectors, shield harmonics, weapon trajectories. Dr. Robert Holmes pushed through the gathering, his applied technologies expertise evident in the rapid calculations streaming across his tablet. The mathematical patterns are incredible. He projected a split-screen analysis. Her brush strokes incorporate both Federation and Klingon tactical algorithms. She's created a unified combat language without realizing it. The station's primary holodeck activated under Davidson Jr. commands, integrating the newly extracted tactical data. Battle simulations materialized, flowing with the organic grace of Bryn's artwork while maintaining military precision. Colonel James Harrison's xenolinguistics scanner hummed as he studied the calligraphic elements. These markings bridge our tactical terminology gap. His fingers trace the flowing script. The visual representation creates an intuitive understanding for both species. No translation protocols needed. Captain Reynolds guided a group of officers through the modified simulation. Tactical officers from both species demonstrated improved response times, their movements aligned with Bryn's artistic interpretation of combat flow. "The performance metrics are clear," Reynolds said, displaying the results. 30% improvement in coordination between mixed-species bridge crews. Kavor watched the demonstrations, his earlier reservations transforming as he observed Klingon and human officers moving in synchronized patterns guided by his daughter's artistic vision. The warrior's movements matched the fluid grace of her brush strokes. Professor Wilson arrived with a stack of declassified files, spreading them across Richard's desk. Previous attempts at visual tactical fusion failed due to cultural barriers. He activated a series of historical recordings, but Bryn's work naturally bridges these gaps. Dr. Zhang's archaeological scanner revealed new layers of meaning in the scroll's border designs. These patterns match recently uncovered military documents on Boreth. He projected images of ancient Klingon texts alongside Bryn's artwork. The similarity in documentation style is remarkable. Engineer Larson worked at the simulation controls, his fingers flying across the interface as he integrated Bryn's artistic principles into the combat training protocols. The holographic battlefield responded, flowing between human and Klingon tactical doctrines with natural precision. "The neural interface readings are optimal," Larson reported, displaying the training metrics. Cadets from both species show improved spatial awareness and tactical response times. Richard stood beside Bryn as she moved through the transformed classroom, her artwork now the foundation of a revolution in military training. She paused before the active simulation, watching as her painted scenes guided the movements of warriors from two worlds. The station's computer cores hummed as they processed the influx of new tactical data, each piece of artwork yielding fresh insights into the fusion of human and Klingon combat doctrine. Admiral Holmes reviewed the mounting evidence, his plans for expanded cultural military exchange programs gaining momentum with each successful demonstration. Through the classroom's windows, Earth's sunset painted the sky in colors that matched Bryn's battle scenes, nature's art complementing the fusion of warfare and creativity unfolding within. The modified simulations continued to run, each cycle revealing new applications for her unconscious integration of two martial traditions. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Stone burst from the holodeck control room, his fingers dancing across a tactical display. Admiral Davidson, the defensive applications there revolutionary. He projected a three-dimensional model of Earth's defense grid, overlaid with patterns extracted from Bryn's artwork. "Look at these shield configurations." The gathered officers crowded around Stone's display as he manipulated the projection. Her artistic representation of three-dimensional space naturally accounts for optimal coverage patterns we've never identified. The shield geometry. He highlighted a series of interlocking fields. "It's perfect, Doctor." James Morrison strode through the doorway, his Jupiter Defense Station insignia glinting under the holographic light. His scanner hummed as he analyzed the projected patterns. These shield harmonics. He overlaid his own calculations. A 37% increase in defensive efficiency with reduced power consumption. Kavor stepped closer to the display, his eyes fixed on a familiar section of space near Saul's edge. Colonel Reynolds activated a tactical simulation, showing how the new shield patterns would have altered the battle's outcome. Your battle cruiser, Kavor, with these configurations. The simulation displayed the cruiser surviving the engagement that had claimed it. Kavor's hand traced the shield patterns derived from his daughter's brushwork. She has enhanced our defenses through art. His voice carried a new note of understanding, a warrior's gift expressed through paint. In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Davidson's voice echoed through the station's comm system. Shield test commencing. The bay's protective fields shimmered with new geometries based on Brin's artistic principles. Power efficiency up 40%. Coverage density increased across all vectors. Commander Harrison worked at his tactical station, correlating Brin's earlier paintings with historical battles. Every piece predicted optimal defensive formations. He displayed side-by-side comparisons. Formations our tactical computers never calculated. Dr. Wilson arrived with fresh analysis of the shield harmonics. His scanner revealed complex mathematical principles embedded in Brin's brush techniques. The modulation patterns in her artwork, they bridged the gap between Federation and Klingon shield technologies. He projected equations alongside magnified sections of her paintings. She's created a hybrid system superior to both. Kavor's communicator chirped with an urgent priority signal. The Klingon Defense Ministry's insignia materialized above his wrist. As he read the transmission, his posture straightened. The High Command requests immediate implementation across our defense fleet. He looked at his daughter with newfound pride. Your art will protect our worlds. Richard watched as Master Sergeant Holmes documented the shield modifications, preparing implementation protocols for distribution to other installations. Through the classroom windows, the station's shields flickered as engineering teams applied Brin's artistic principles to the defensive systems. The art forms are different, Brin said, studying the modified shield geometries, but the patterns remain the same. She lifted her brush, adding fresh details to her current work. The holographic tactical overlay shifted in response, revealing new defensive configurations. The station's shield grid pulsed with enhanced power as Engineer Larson integrated more of Brin's patterns into the control systems. Each brush stroke she made generated new tactical data, feeding directly into the station's defensive computers through Sarah's analysis protocols. Through the windows, Earth's atmosphere rippled with the first tests of planetary-scale shield modifications. The defense grid's new configurations traced patterns that matched the flowing lines of Brin's artwork, transforming military technology through the vision of a young artist who saw battlefields as canvases. Canvas of imagination and tactical reality. As Brin added the final strokes to her latest piece, Chief Medical Officer Marcus Reed's medical scanner hummed to life, its sensors tracking the unusual neural patterns emanating from her focused mind. These readings are extraordinary, Reed said, adjusting the scanner's sensitivity. Her brain is simultaneously engaging both combat and creative centers. He projected a three-dimensional model of Brin's neural activity. This combination shouldn't be possible in Klingon physiology. The data caught Dr. Thomas Blackwood's attention as he entered the classroom, his Luna Medical Center credentials still displayed on his chest. He moved directly to Reed's station, analyzing the complex neural patterns with practiced expertise. The integration is seamless, Blackwood said, expanding the holographic brain model. She's accessing spatial awareness regions typically reserved for battlefield situations while maintaining full artistic function. In the station's engineering section, James Cooper's voice crackled through the comm system. Shield modifications complete. Power consumption down 4 to 5%. The station's defensive grid shimmered with new geometries derived from Brin's artwork. protection levels holding steady at enhanced parameters. Admiral Davidson studied the power efficiency readings. Implement immediate testing protocols for fleet-wide adoption. His orders transmitted across secure channels as Cooper's team documented the successful modifications. Colonel Harrison guided Kavor through a technical demonstration, displaying holographic models of Klingon battle cruisers. The retrofit process is straightforward. He highlighted key shield emitter points. These improvements would have saved countless warriors in past engagements. The classroom's attention shifted as Captain Marcus Wright arrived, his pristine uniform bearing the distinctive insignia of the prototype vessel Aegis. He studied Bryn's artwork with calculated interest. "Request permission to implement these shield configurations on my ship," Wright said, presenting his authorization codes to Admiral Holmes. "Our simulations indicate a dramatic increase in survival rates." Commander Stone worked at a nearby tactical station, monitoring a group of cadets training under Bryn's visualization protocols. The holographic combat scenario displayed their movements, each trainee demonstrating enhanced spatial awareness. 40% improvement in response times, Stone reported, marking another successful run. Both species show equal benefits from the artistic integration. Engineer Davidson emerged from the prototype lab, carrying a modified personal shield generator. The principles scaled down effectively. He activated the device, producing a shimming field that matched the flowing patterns of Bryn's brush strokes. Ground forces can benefit immediately from these improvements. Dr. Reed continued his neural analysis, comparing Bryn's brain patterns to established combat meditation techniques. "She's naturally incorporating elements from both species," he said, highlighting key areas of overlap. This could revolutionize warrior training methods. Kavor studied the medical data, his tactical experience recognizing the implications. The Academy's training division must see this. He initiated a priority transmission to Con-OS, including detailed scans of Bryn's neural activity. Security, Chief Palmer's voice interrupted through the station's comm system. Containment field modification successful. Stability increased by 50% using the new geometries. The station's security screens displayed the enhanced containment systems, each barrier incorporating artistic elements from Bryn's work. Richard watched as Engineer Larson coordinated with other technical teams, documenting every successful implementation of Bryn's shield principles. The gathered data would form the foundation for widespread adoption across both human and Klingon space. "The art found its own path," Bryn said, adding subtle details to her current piece while monitoring the various technical displays. "The brush simply followed the natural flow of combat." Cooper's engineering team continued their modifications, each successful implementation revealing new applications for Bryn's artistic insights. Through the station's windows, the enhanced shield grid created patterns that merged defensive power with artistic grace, a visual representation of two cultures finding common ground in the space between art and war. Wright's tactical officer transmitted the first preliminary results from the Aegis prototype testing, the data streams showing unprecedented improvements in shield performance. The practical validation of Bryn's techniques continued to accumulate as more systems incorporated her unique approach to spatial visualization. Lieutenant Marcus Foster leaned forward at his scanning station, his fingers flying across the controls as unusual energy readings caught his attention. The enhanced shield grid pulsed with familiar patterns derived from Bryn's artwork, but the scanner's data revealed something unprecedented. "Admiral Davidson," Foster called out, projecting a three-dimensional display of the energy patterns. "The shield modifications are generating unexpected sensor returns." Davidson strode to the scanning station, studying the complex data streams. "Explain. The shield geometry isn't just defending the station, it's creating an enhanced detection field." Foster highlighted sections of the energy pattern. Range and resolution exceed our standard sensor arrays by a factor of 3. Dr. James Cooper entered the control room, his eyes widening at the sensor data. He pulled up his own specialized scanning equipment and began taking detailed measurements of the shield grid's energy signature. "These overlapping patterns," Cooper said, manipulating the holographic display. "They're forming natural sensor enhancement zones." He projected a tactical overlay showing previously invisible spatial distortions. "Look at this, we're detecting anomalies that both our sensors and Klingon systems normally miss." Kavor's communicator chimed again. This time, the message brought news that sent his eyebrows rising. "A bird of prey near the neutral zone has implemented the shield modifications." He displayed the tactical data. Their sensor range has tripled while maintaining full cloaking capability. Commander Thomas Reed rushed into the room, his advanced sensor development team close behind. They immediately began interfacing their specialized equipment with the station's enhanced sensor grid. "The artistic patterns create natural focal points for sensor energy," Reed explained, displaying real-time scans of nearby space. "Each brush stroke translates to an optimal detection vector." Engineer Robert Stone's voice came through the comm system. "Internal sensors are showing similar enhancement. We've identified structural stress points in sectors 7 through 12 that our standard scans missed completely." Chief Security Officer Marcus Davidson activated the station's automated defense grid, now modified with Brin's shield patterns. Holographic targets appeared throughout the nearby space, testing the system's response time. "Target acquisition improved by 60%, he reported, watching as the defense system tracked and engaged each simulated threat with unprecedented speed. Dr. William Harrison documented the results, his tactical display showing the natural integration of sensor and shield coverage. "The artistic patterns create perfect overlapping fields." He highlighted several key formations. "These configurations would have detected the Romulan incursion at Outpost 4, Kavor finished, recognizing the tactical significance. Engineer James Morrison's team had already begun adapting the modifications for planetary defense. The first test results appeared on the main screen, a colony world's entire defensive grid enhanced through Brin's artistic patterns. 40% reduction in power requirements, Morrison announced, with full sensor coverage of the entire planet. Richard watched as Brin studied the various displays showing her artwork's unexpected impact. She dipped her brush in fresh paint, adding subtle details to her current piece, while the sensor enhancements continued to evolve around them. "The shields and sensors work as one," she said, her brush flowing across the canvas in perfect harmony with the energy patterns dancing across the tactical displays. "Like warriors moving together in battle dance." Through the station's windows, the enhanced shield grid shimmered with new purpose, each artistic pattern now serving as both barrier and sentinel. The station's engineering team worked steadily, documenting every aspect of the sensor breakthrough as Foster's deep space scanners continued to reveal previously hidden wonders in the space around them. Chief Engineer Marcus Thompson frowned at his console as the shield matrix readings shifted into an unexpected pattern. The harmonics displayed across his screen pulsed with a distinctive rhythm that didn't match any known shield configuration. "Admiral Davidson," Thompson called out, "I'm detecting unusual resonance patterns within the shield matrix." The Admiral moved from Foster's sensor station to examine Thompson's readings. The engineering display showed complex wave formations flowing through the shield grid, each pattern perfectly aligned with the artistic elements from Brin's designs. "These harmonics," Thompson said, highlighting specific frequency bands, "they're creating natural resonance chambers throughout the shield structure." He adjusted the scanning resolution, revealing intricate layers of energy patterns. The effect extends well beyond our normal communication range. Station Communications Officer Robert Holmes rushed to his station, hands flying across the controls as he redirected communication signals through the modified shield grid. His eyes widened as the test results appeared. Signal clarity improved by 200%, Holmes announced, displaying the transmission data. And it's working in the dead zones areas where we've never maintained stable communications. The station's communication screens lit up with incoming transmissions from previously unreachable sectors. Each signal came through with crystal clarity, processed through the shield grid's artistic patterns. Dr. James Sullivan strode onto the command deck, his Mars Communications Center credentials catching the light. He moved directly to Holmes's station, analyzing the unprecedented signal clarity with focused intensity. The resonance chambers are acting as natural signal amplifiers, Sullivan said, studying the frequency patterns. These artistic configurations, they're achieving what our best computer models couldn't replicate in decades of research. Kavor's communicator chimed with priority messages from the Klingon Science Council. The defensive outpost near the neutral zone reports successful implementation, he said, displaying tactical data. They're maintaining clear transmissions through ion storms that have blocked communications for generations. Colonel Marcus Wright arrived with his Deep Space Communications Network team, their specialized equipment already interfacing with the station's systems. Wright's tactical display showed a network of relay stations stretching into deep space, each point pulsing with new potential. We're eliminating transmission delays across the entire network, Wright reported, highlighting successful tests across vast distances. The artistic patterns create perfect signal pathways. Engineer James Foster worked at a nearby terminal, adapting the shield modifications for internal systems. The station's layout displayed on his screen, showing persistent communication dead zones vanishing as the new patterns took effect. Critical areas are fully covered now, Foster said, running diagnostic checks on previously problematic sectors. Engineering, medical, security, all reporting clear signals. Dr. Richard Harrison examined the technical data streaming in from multiple implementation sites. His research team documented each successful application, building a comprehensive database of the shield pattern's communication properties. Commander Thomas Stone's voice came through the enhanced comm system, reporting from the Colonial Defense Initiative headquarters. Border colonies are showing immediate improvement in coordination capabilities. Communication-related incidents down 7 to 5% in initial testing zones. Engineer Marcus Davidson emerged from the prototype lab, carrying a modified combat communication unit. Personal systems are responding to the enhancement protocols, he said, activating the device. Clear tactical communications cut through the heaviest shielding in the testing chamber. Dr. James Morrison's scanner picked up new energy signatures forming within the modified shield grid. The resonance patterns are revealing spatial anomalies we couldn't detect before, he said, tracking previously invisible disturbances in the surrounding space. Richard watched Bryn add subtle details to her artwork as the technical teams continued their analysis. Each brush stroke generated new possibilities in the station's systems, bridging the gap between artistic expression and practical application. Through the observation windows, the enhanced shield grid shimmered with dual purpose protecting the station, while simultaneously carrying crystal-clear communications across vast distances. The engineering team worked steadily, documenting every successful implementation as the network of enhanced systems expanded through both human and Klingon space. Chief Systems Analyst Marcus Bennett scowled at his workstation, manipulating a series of intricate data streams flowing from the enhanced shield grid. Admiral Davidson, Bennett called out, projecting a new set of readings onto the main tactical display. The communication enhancements are creating an unexpected network effect between shield generators. He highlighted several interconnected energy patterns that pulsed in perfect synchronization. Individual generators are coordinating automatically, maintaining full coverage without additional power draw. Dr. Thomas Reynolds rushed through the station's entrance, his Saturn defense station credentials catching the light as he made his way directly to Bennett's workstation. His eyes widened at the complex data streams. The artistic patterns create natural synchronization points, Reynolds said, fingers flying across the controls. He isolated specific frequency bands that showed shield generators working in concert. This level of automated coordination, it's unprecedented. Engineer James Morrison stood at his engineering station, monitoring a prototype formation of modified shield generators. "Watch this," he said, activating the test sequence. Multiple shield bubbles sprang to life, their edges merging seamlessly into a unified protective field. Admiral Davidson studied the results with intense focus. "Prepare a squadron of Earth Defense Force vessels for immediate testing. I want to see these modifications in action under combat conditions." Kavor's communicator chimed with an urgent message from Klingon High Command. His expression remained neutral as he read the report, but his voice carried unmistakable pride. "Our border outposts report early warning capabilities have tripled since implementing the modifications." He displayed tactical data showing previously undetectable threats now clearly visible on long-range scans. Colonel Marcus Stone strode onto the command deck with his advanced combat systems team. They immediately began integrating Brin's shield patterns into standard fleet formations displayed on the tactical screens. "Look at this coordination," Stone said, running a combat simulation. A squadron of ships executed complex maneuvers while maintaining perfectly synchronized shield coverage. "We've never achieved this level of tactical integration before." Admiral Holmes watched the simulation with keen interest. "Establish a dedicated task force. These enhanced capabilities require new combat doctrines." Engineer Robert Davidson's voice came through the comm system from the Emergency Response Center. "Crisis simulation complete. Response times improved by 87% with the modified shields." The main screen displayed multiple scenarios where clear communications and coordinated shield coverage prevented cascade failures during simulated attacks. Chief Technical Officer James Harrison worked at the Planetary Defense Station, adapting the shield improvements for colonial implementation. The tactical display showed an entire settlement surrounded by an interlocking network of modified shield generators. "Power consumption down 30%, Harrison reported, "and coverage is seamless across the entire colony." Commander Thomas Wright entered the command center with representatives from several border colonies. "The Joint Species Defense Initiative is already seeing results," he said, projecting a tactical map of the border regions. "Human and Klingon settlements are creating unified defensive perimeters. No more gaps in coverage." Dr. Marcus Foster analyzed data from recent evacuation drills. "The enhanced shield network creates stable corridors through combat zones," he said, highlighting safe passage routes that remained protected even under simulated heavy fire. Lieutenant Commander James Holmes documented another fleet exercise, tracking multiple ships as they maintained tight formation through a series of evasive maneuvers. The modified shields allow the vessels to execute complex tactical patterns while preserving their defensive integrity. Richard stood near Brin's workstation, watching as she added delicate details to her latest piece. Each brush stroke seemed to mirror the synchronized patterns flowing through the station's enhanced systems. The engineering team continued documenting the defensive improvements, preparing detailed implementation protocols for distribution across human and Klingon space. Through the station's windows, A squadron of Earth Defense Force vessels moved into position for their first live exercise with the modified shield systems. Their protective fields shimmered with Bryn's artistic patterns as they prepared to demonstrate the full potential of their enhanced capabilities. Defensive capabilities. As the squadron began their maneuvers, Ambassador Marcus Thorne stepped onto the command deck, his Earth Central Command credentials drawing immediate attention. He moved directly to Admiral Davidson's position, tablet in hand. "Admiral, these results exceed our highest projections," Thorne said, displaying analysis from multiple implementation sites. "The integration of shield modifications has created unprecedented opportunities for cooperation with our Klingon allies." Davidson studied the data, noting successful implementations across both human and Klingon territories. "Show me the border statistics." Thorne brought up a detailed map highlighting colonial regions. Incidents down 90% in areas using the modified systems. The enhanced communication capabilities naturally encourage coordination between settlements. Kavor's communicator chimed with an encrypted priority signal. He stepped aside, speaking quietly in Klingon. His posture straightened as he returned to the group. "Chancellor Kamepek has created a new position within the Klingon Defense Force," Kavor announced. "Director of Integrated Defense Systems. He has offered me this appointment." Chief Engineer Robert Anderson's voice cut through the moment. "Admiral, you need to see this." He activated the main tactical display, showing a mixed formation of Earth and Klingon vessels running combat drills. Their shields pulsed in perfect synchronization, creating overlapping fields of protection that adapted to each ship's unique design characteristics. "The patterns compensate automatically for different shield frequencies," Anderson explained, highlighting energy flows between vessels. "They're achieving maximum coverage with minimal power expenditure." Security Chief Marcus Thompson worked at a nearby console, implementing new protocols based on the shield modifications. "Internal security grid updated," he reported. "The artistic patterns create autonomous protection zones that respond instantly to threat levels." Dr. Thomas Cooper entered from the prototype lab, carrying a modified combat armor chest piece. "Personal shield systems are ready for testing," he said, activating the unit. The armor gleamed with scaled-down versions of Bryn's patterns. Engineer William Stone rushed in from the power distribution center. "The patterns work on colonial power grids," he announced, projecting infrastructure schematics. "Enhanced transmission efficiency across all systems." Ambassador Richard Holmes arrived with a delegation of Earth and Klingon diplomatic staff. "We're proposing standardization under the Bryn Protocol," he said, distributing technical documentation. "Full implementation across both species' territories." Commander Thomas Wright worked steadily at Tactical, recording performance data as more ships joined the exercise outside. "Ships equipped with the modifications instinctively coordinate their movements," he noted, tracking formation changes. "They're anticipating each other's tactical needs without explicit communication." Richard watched Bryn add final touches to her latest work, each brush stroke flowing with the same natural rhythm as the synchronized shield patterns visible through the station's windows. The modified defense systems created visible links between vessels of both species, their protective fields merging seamlessly as they maneuvered through space. Dr. Marcus Reed arrived from Earth's Colonial Infrastructure Division, immediately connecting his specialized scanning equipment to the station's systems. "The power efficiency improvements are revolutionary," he said, analyzing grid performance data. "We can strengthen entire planetary defense networks without increasing energy consumption." Colonel James Barrett's tactical teams spread through the station, implementing Thompson's security protocols across all critical systems. "Response times improving exponentially," Barrett reported, monitoring threat detection readings. The artistic patterns create perfect coverage with zero blind spots. The Earth Defense Force Squadron outside executed another series of complex maneuvers, their modified shields flowing like liquid metal as they adjusted formation. A group of Klingon vessels decloaked nearby, smoothly integrating into the exercise pattern. Their combined defensive screen pulsed with Bryn's artistic elements, creating a unified protective field that adapted instantly to each ship's position and capabilities. A sleek vessel caught Richard's attention as it glided into view beyond the shield perimeter. Its hull gleamed with an unusual iridescence, surface panels arranged in geometric patterns that mirrored Bryn's artistic style. "The Harmony has arrived," announced Captain Marcus Blackwood over the station's comm system. The prototype vessel settled into position alongside the existing formation, its modified shield system activating with a distinctive ripple effect. Admiral Davidson moved to the observation windows. First ship built from the ground up with Bryn's patterns integrated into every system. Chief Engineer Morrison's console lit up with incoming data streams. "These readings are extraordinary." He isolated a particular energy signature. "The shield resonance is creating stable magnetic containment fields." "Look at these weapon system modifications." Dr. Reynolds joined Morrison at his station, analyzing the data. "The containment fields could revolutionize our approach to combat situations. Non-lethal options become viable with this level of control." The Harmony executed a series of precise maneuvers, its shields adapting fluidly to each position change. Kavor watched with keen interest as tactical readouts displayed the vessel's capabilities. "My first action as director will be implementing these advances across our defense network," Kavor said. He gestured to a readout showing the ship's performance against simulated environmental hazards. "These protection levels against stellar phenomena will transform colonial defense strategies." Dr. Reynolds directed his engineering team to begin adapting the Harmony's modifications for rescue vessels. "Configure emergency transponders to match these shield frequencies," he instructed. "We'll extend operational parameters into previously inaccessible disaster zones." Security Chief Anderson's fingers flew across his console as he integrated the new data. "Implementing automated response protocols now." The tactical display showed layers of coordinated defensive coverage extending between Earth and Klingon vessels. Colonel Stone studied the emerging patterns. "These formations maximize each ship's strengths while compensating for design differences." He highlighted specific examples where human and Klingon vessels created complementary defensive screens. Engineer Holmes burst onto the command deck. "The shield modifications there perfect for atmospheric containment." He projected schematics of a colonial biodome. "The resonance patterns naturally stabilize environmental systems." Commander Wright compiled combat simulation results on his tactical station. "Survival rates against extreme conditions are unprecedented. Ships equipped with these modifications show consistent success in situations that would normally be fatal." Through the observation windows, the Harmony demonstrated its enhanced capabilities. Its shields shimmered with Bryn's distinctive patterns as it navigated through a series of increasingly complex scenarios. Each successful test added to the growing database of performance metrics. Master Engineer Davidson worked at the Planetary Defense Station, expanding the shield network's coverage. "We can link entire systems together," he reported, displaying a tactical map of coordinated defensive grids spanning multiple colonies. Richard observed Bryn at her workstation as she refined another set of patterns. Her artistic focus remained steady despite the flurry of activity around her, each new design flowing naturally from her creative process into practical application. The engineering team documented every successful implementation, establishing standardized protocols for future development. Their systematic approach preserved the essential artistic elements while creating reproducible technical specifications. Beyond the station, the Harmony continued its demonstration flights, its enhanced systems providing concrete proof of the revolutionary advances emerging from the fusion of art and technology. Each new test expanded the possibilities for continued cooperation between human and Klingon space. As the Harmony completed another intricate maneuver, Admiral Davidson's tablet chimed with an urgent notification. He studied the screen, his eyebrows rising slightly as he read. "Richard," he called across the command deck, "we have a rather interesting development." Richard stepped away from Bryn's workstation, noting how her brush paused mid-stroke at the mention of his name. Davidson handed him the tablet, displaying official communications from both Earth Command and the Klingon High Council. "They want you on Boreth," Davidson said, bringing up supporting documentation. "Both governments are specifically requesting your presence alongside Bryn." Master Engineer Blackwood approached, holding detailed sensor readings from the classroom sessions. "These readings explain why," he said, highlighting specific data streams. "Bryn's artistic patterns show a 30% stronger resonance when created during your teaching sessions. The shield modifications become significantly more effective." Kavor studied the data over Richard's shoulder. "The Chancellor will be pleased. This aligns perfectly with my new responsibilities as Director of Integrated Defense Systems." Colonel Peterson stepped forward, his expertise in educational psychology lending weight to his analysis. "Your teaching methods naturally bridge human and Klingon learning styles," he explained, displaying comparative studies. "You've created an optimal environment for technological innovation through artistic expression." Chief Engineer Reynolds worked at a nearby console, processing data from the classroom's environmental controls. "I've successfully replicated some of Bryn's modifications using the training parameters," he reported. "The teaching environment itself contributes to the effectiveness of the shield patterns." Commander Anderson tapped commands into his station. "Converting your classroom into a temporary research facility," he announced. "We need to document these environmental factors for implementation across other facilities." Dr. Stone arrived on the command deck, his expertise in xenopedagogy immediately apparent as he analyzed the classroom data. "Fascinating," he murmured, studying the readings. "Your approach creates a perfect synthesis of human creative expression and Klingon tactical thinking." Engineer Foster adjusted environmental controls throughout the station, matching the conditions from Bryn's most successful sessions. "Initial tests with other Klingon students show promising results," he reported. "The specific classroom conditions enhance their artistic technical capabilities." Commander Morrison projected blueprints of a new facility on Boreth. "Construction begins immediately," he said, highlighting areas designed to replicate Richard's teaching environment. "We're incorporating every element that contributed to Bryn's breakthrough." Dr. Harrison's research team compiled performance data, comparing shield effectiveness during various testing scenarios. "The modifications show peak performance when you're present during implementation," he told Richard. "Your involvement appears crucial for maximizing their potential." Kavor received a direct transmission from the High Council, his expression showing satisfaction as he read. "You have been granted a permanent position at the Boreth Military Academy," he informed Richard. "The first human instructor in Klingon military education." Bryn continued working at her station, but her brush strokes now moved in perfect synchronization, with the Harmony's shield patterns visible through the window. Each artistic element she created seemed to flow directly into the vessel's defensive systems, strengthening the connection between human creativity and Klingon technology. The engineering team began documenting every aspect of the classroom environment, from lighting levels to atmospheric composition. Their instruments recorded the subtle interactions between Richard's teaching methods and Brin's artistic process, building a foundation for future educational protocols. Commander Morrison's construction crews on Borith transmitted updates on the new facility's progress. The design incorporated specific elements from Richard's classroom, creating spaces where art and technology could merge under optimal conditions. Each room was calibrated to enhance the natural synergy between human and Klingon learning styles. Chief Engineer Marcus Winters strode onto the command deck, his tablet displaying detailed schematics of the station's newly completed engineering lab. "Construction finished ahead of schedule," he announced, bringing up a holographic display of the facility. "We've replicated every environmental parameter from Richard's classroom." The new lab occupied a previously unused section of the engineering deck, its systems calibrated to match the exact conditions that had fostered Brin's breakthrough. Dr. James Blackwood moved through the space with specialized sensors, documenting each environmental factor. "Light wavelengths match within 0.1%, Blackwood noted, adjusting a sensor array. "Acoustic resonance patterns create the same harmonic frequencies present during Brin's initial success." Richard observed the lab's activation sequence through the monitoring station. Banks of specialized equipment powered up in sequence, each system contributing to the carefully crafted environment. Engineer Robert Holmes worked at the primary control panel, fine-tuning the atmospheric mixture. "Bringing secondary testing facility online," Holmes reported. The engineering bay's environmental systems shifted, matching the classroom specifications. A group of Klingon students entered, their expressions mixing curiosity with military discipline as they approached the artistic workstations. The first student lifted a brush, his movements initially stiff and mechanical. As the optimized environment took effect, his strokes became more fluid. The defensive screen visible through the viewport responded, shifting slightly with each artistic element he created. Colonel Thomas Morrison watched from the tactical station, comparing performance metrics between traditional training methods and Richard's hybrid approach. "Integration rates improving by 23%, he said, highlighting data streams showing enhanced coordination between human and Klingon tactical teams. Kavor's console chimed with an incoming transmission. He studied the data from the Science Council, his expression intensifying. "The Council's analysis confirms it," he said, turning to Richard. "Shield modifications show 40% greater effectiveness under your guidance." The station's engineering team assembled portable versions of the teaching environment, each unit carefully calibrated to maintain optimal conditions. Master Engineer William Stone supervised the final adjustments to the mobile facilities. "Environmental controls stabilized," Stone confirmed, sealing the first portable unit, ready for deployment to outlying installations. Commander Marcus Davidson authorized the conversion of Deck 7, transforming the entire level into an expanded research facility. Construction crews moved efficiently through the space, installing specialized systems based on Richard's classroom design. "Multiple testing stations active," reported the deck supervisor. "Engineering teams can now study artistic technical integration across parallel implementations." Admiral James Holmes presented his findings at the command briefing, displaying comparative analyses of traditional military training methods. "Your approach naturally incorporates key elements from both species' combat doctrine," he explained to Richard. "Earth Command is establishing a dedicated division to develop this further." Engineer Robert Harrison worked at the Shield Control Station, adapting the environmental specifications for Starship implementation. "Standardizing classroom conditions for fleet-wide deployment," he said, transmitting the protocols to waiting vessels. Dr. Marcus Foster's research team documented Shield performance metrics as Brin created new patterns under the optimized conditions. Energy efficiency peaks when artistic elements are implemented in this environment, Foster noted, highlighting specific data points. Commander Thomas Wright's analysis team filled the observation room, recording every aspect of Richard's teaching methodology. Their instruments captured the subtle interplay between instruction style and student response, building a comprehensive framework for future expansion. The engineering corps transmitted construction updates from multiple sites, each new facility taking shape according to the exact specifications that had proven so effective. Richard watched through the station's long-range sensors as the network of teaching centers grew, spreading across both human and Klingon space. Bryn continued her work in the original classroom, her artistic patterns flowing seamlessly into the station's defensive systems. Through the viewport, the Harmony executed another series of maneuvers, its enhanced shields displaying the practical application of her latest modifications. The portable teaching units began transmitting data as they came online at various installations, each new activation expanding the scope of the art integration program. Richard monitored the incoming results, noting how quickly students adapted to the optimized environment. As Richard studied the incoming data streams, Admiral Marcus Reynolds entered the command deck, his presence drawing immediate attention. Behind him, a team of technicians wheeled in what appeared to be a modified holographic combat simulator. "This is what we've been developing at Earth Defense," Reynolds said, activating the device. A shimming field materialized, creating a perfect replica of Richard's classroom environment. The prototype combines holographic combat scenarios with the exact conditions that facilitated Bryn's breakthroughs. Master Engineer James Blackwood stepped forward, adjusting the environmental controls. The simulator's interior shifted, matching the precise atmospheric composition and lighting spectrum of the original teaching space. "We've incorporated every variable from your successful sessions." At a nearby workstation, station engineer Robert Holmes called up a neural pattern analysis. "Watch this," he said, highlighting a complex wave pattern. The display showed Bryn's brainwave activity during her most effective artistic sessions. "We can record and replicate these neural states using the station's holographic systems." Holmes initiated a demonstration. The simulator projected guide patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the recorded neural activity. A young Klingon student stepped inside, picking up a holographic brush. His movements initially stuttered, but as the guide patterns synchronized with his own neural patterns, his strokes became more confident. 60% of test subjects successfully access similar artistic technical abilities using these templates, Holmes reported, tracking the student's progress. Kavor accessed new data from his console, displaying the Klingon Science Council's latest findings. The numbers scrolled across the screen. Shield geometry comprehension up 200%, implementation efficiency increased across all measured parameters. "Construction has already begun on 5 new training centers," he said. Chief Engineer Thomas Morrison worked at the bridge simulator controls, integrating the artistic enhancement protocols. Through the observation window, a bridge crew ran combat drills under the modified conditions. Their movements flowed with unprecedented coordination as tactical decisions merged seamlessly with creative problem-solving. "Implementing these modifications across the training fleet," Morrison said, transmitting the new protocols. "The improvement in crew performance is remarkable." In the Tactical Operations Center, Security Chief William Stone guided Richard through the hybrid command space he'd created. Holographic displays showed crisis scenarios playing out, while environmental controls maintained the optimized creative conditions. Officers moved through their responses with enhanced efficiency, their decisions combining tactical precision with innovative solutions. Dr. Marcus Foster supervised the loading of portable training units onto a transport vessel. These mobile modules can deploy anywhere, he explained, checking the calibration on a compact environmental control system. Remote colonies, outposts, even ships in transit. Commander James Harrison presented his findings on student selection criteria. We've identified key indicators for artistic technical potential in both species, he said, displaying comparative analyses. The standardized protocols are already identifying promising candidates. The doors to the new testing facility slid open, revealing Dr. Thomas Wright's completed hybrid training environment. Holographic combat scenarios played out in one section while artistic workstations occupied another. A student created a shield pattern at her station, and the holographic simulation instantly displayed its tactical impact. Real-time feedback speeds the learning process significantly, Wright explained, monitoring the student's progress. They see immediate practical applications for their artistic expressions. Engineering Corps Chief Robert Davidson directed the installation of a ship-mounted training facility aboard the Harmony. The compact space utilized every innovation from Richard's classroom, scaled perfectly for Starship implementation. This design allows for continued training during active deployment, Davidson said, adjusting the final calibrations. Students maintain their progress even during long-range missions. Admiral Holmes reviewed performance data from multiple testing sites, each facility reporting similar improvements in student capabilities. The numbers validated every aspect of the program's expansion. Through the command deck viewport, Richard watched as another transport arrived, carrying more students and researchers drawn to the station's growing reputation for innovation in military education. Bryn worked at her station nearby, her artistic patterns flowing into the defense systems with practiced ease as the station continued its evolution into a center for artistic technical advancement. Richard's attention shifted from the viewport as Chief Medical Officer Marcus Henderson burst into the command center, tablet in hand. "You need to see these scan results," Henderson said, bringing up a detailed neural imaging display. "The changes in student physiology are remarkable. The scans showed enhanced neural pathway development in both human and Klingon subjects." Henderson highlighted specific regions of increased activity. These areas control spatial reasoning and tactical analysis. The optimized environment isn't just teaching them, it's physically improving their capacity to learn. James Blackwood approached from the newly completed Training Center Alpha, his engineering coveralls showing traces of the installation work. "The automated systems are operational," he reported, activating a wall-mounted display. The screen showed multiple training stations where students worked with holographic interfaces, their movements guided by environmental controls precisely matched to Richard's classroom specifications. "Performance metrics from the first week," Blackwood said, scrolling through data streams. Student achievement levels glowed in green, consistently exceeding projected benchmarks by 150%. Kavor's console lit up with an incoming priority transmission from the Klingon Military Academy. He studied the combat footage playing across his screen. Graduates of the Art Integration program engaging in actual battlefield scenarios. "Our warriors make tactical decisions 45% faster," he announced, while maintaining superior accuracy rates. The engineering bay doors opened as Dr. Thomas Reynolds led his team through final checks on the vessel-mounted training modules. "Environmental controls stable," Reynolds confirmed, monitoring readouts from 3 Klingon battle cruisers. The Devore reports successful shield modifications during their engagement with raiders in the Kavari sector. William Morrison worked at the security station, analyzing threat response patterns from officers trained under the optimized conditions. "Sensor logs from beta section," he said, displaying recorded security incidents. The footage showed security teams responding to simulated threats with unprecedented precision, their movements flowing with artistic efficiency. Admiral Robert Holmes studied the construction updates from Earth Defense Command. Holographic displays showed 5 new training centers taking shape across the network, each facility built to exactly match the environmental specifications that had proven so effective. Portable units ready for deployment, Marcus Foster announced from the engineering lab. His team loaded compact environmental generators into transport containers, each device calibrated to recreate Richard's classroom conditions. The units powered up in sequence, their readings holding steady at 95% of permanent installation effectiveness. Commander James Stone directed a team of researchers through the medical bay, their instruments recording physiological changes in the student population. Neural development accelerates after 3 weeks of exposure, Stone noted, comparing brain scans from different training phases. Chief Engineer Thomas Davidson's voice came through the comm system from the Civilian Emergency Response Center. Implementing art integration protocols now, he reported. On the monitors, emergency teams moved through crisis scenarios with enhanced coordination, their responses showing clear influence from the artistic training methods. The station's docking bay received Colonel Marcus Wright's shuttle, carrying the first graduates from Earth's prototype Art Integration Academy. The students moved with fluid precision as they disembarked, their tactical awareness evident in every motion. Their test scores displayed on nearby screens, showing performance levels 200% above traditional training standards. Richard watched Bryn working with a new group of students, her artistic guidance helping them connect with the defense systems. The station hummed with activity as more facilities came online, each new activation expanding the scope of what had started in a single classroom. Through the command center viewport, transport ships arrived carrying materials and personnel for the next phase of expansion, while the modified shields created patterns of light that seemed to dance among the stars. Station engineer Robert Holmes adjusted the environmental controls, maintaining the precise conditions that fostered these breakthroughs. Neural synchronization patterns holding steady, he reported, monitoring the incoming data from multiple training centers. The holographic combat simulators responded to each student's movements, their artistic expressions translating directly into tactical advantages. The flow of incoming data streams was interrupted by a priority alert from the docking control center. Through the viewport, a sleek vessel unlike any other in the Earth Defense Fleet glided into position. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen, surfaces curved in patterns that echoed the artistic principles Richard had been teaching. The artistic endeavor, Captain Marcus Reynolds announced, bringing up the ship's specifications on the main display. Earth's Advanced Research Division built her according to your classroom's principles. Richard studied the diagrams scrolling across the screen. The vessel's internal layout revealed training spaces seamlessly integrated into every deck, each environment calibrated to match the exact conditions that had proven so effective in his original classroom. Chief Engineer Thomas Blackwood transmitted detailed construction logs to Richard's console. We incorporated the environmental controls throughout the entire structure. The ship maintains optimal creative conditions even during combat maneuvers. Station engineer Robert Davidson's voice came through the comm system, excitement evident in his tone. Sir, you need to see these sensor readings. New data filled the screens, showing unusual energy patterns emanating from the training areas. The students are generating gravitational harmonics identical to those we recorded during Bryn's initial breakthroughs. The harmonics data pulsed in perfect synchronization with the ship's shield matrix. As Richard watched, the defensive screens automatically reconfigured themselves, adapting to threats before the standard sensors detected them. Kavor stood at attention as a transmission arrived from the Klingon High Council. Construction begins today on Boreth, he said, displaying blueprints for a massive training facility. Human and Klingon engineering teams moved across the construction site, their collaborative efforts marking an unprecedented partnership between the species. Master Engineer James Morrison guided Richard through the artistic Endeavor's Tactical Training Center. Security teams flowed through combat drills with fluid precision, their movements blending artistic expression with military efficiency. Implementation across both fleets is proceeding ahead of schedule, Morrison reported, tracking performance metrics that showed a 400% improvement in tactical artistic integration. William Stone's security teams demonstrated the new combat protocols in the ship's main training bay. Officers responded to simulated threats with enhanced speed and coordination, their effectiveness clearly influenced by the optimized environment. Dr. Marcus Foster worked at a communications station, analyzing the gravitational harmonics generated during student sessions. "Watch this," he said, activating a ship-to-ship channel. The transmission cut through normal interference patterns, maintaining crystal clarity. The harmonics stabilize communication frequencies even under combat conditions. Commander Thomas Wright documented the crew's performance from his observation post. "Every engagement scenario shows unprecedented levels of coordination," he noted, compiling data for the Joint Species Research Division. The Engineering Corps, under Robert Holmes's direction, assembled compact versions of the environmental systems. The miniaturized units maintained precise control over atmospheric conditions, ready for installation across the active duty fleet. Admiral James Peterson's arrival brought new authority to the station's expanding role. "This facility is now designated as Joint Species Training Command," he announced, formalizing the station's position as the center for artistic technical advancement. Engineer Marcus Harrison's team adapted the artistic Endeavor systems for planetary defense installations. The first colonial implementation showed immediate results as defense crews demonstrated enhanced performance during border skirmishes. Through it all, Richard observed the systematic documentation of each success, each modification, each breakthrough. The specific conditions that had started in his classroom were becoming standard features of military infrastructure across both species, transforming not just how they trained, but how they approached the fundamental integration of art and combat. From his station, Richard watched as the artistic Endeavor prepared for its first training cruise. Students moved through the ship's enhanced environments with growing confidence, their artistic expressions merging seamlessly with tactical operations as the vessel opened new frontiers in human-Klingon collaboration. As the vessel moved into position, Chief Science Officer Marcus Reynolds burst into activity at his monitoring station. His fingers flew across the controls as unusual energy readings filled his display. "Captain, these signatures, they're remarkable," Reynolds said, highlighting patterns that pulsed in synchronization with student training activities. "The harmonics from simultaneous training sessions are amplifying each other." Richard moved to examine the data. The energy patterns showed clear correlation between training facilities across the station, the artistic Endeavor, and the newly established centers elsewhere. Each location generated its own distinct signature, but when activities aligned, the combined effect multiplied exponentially. Station Engineer James Davidson stepped forward, tablet in hand. "We can harness this," he said, bringing up schematics for a new installation. A dedicated synchronization hub to coordinate all training activities across human and Klingon space. Construction began immediately. Davidson's teams worked around the clock, assembling the hub's intricate systems. Within days, the first tests revealed shield harmonics of unprecedented power radiating from synchronized student groups. Kavor's console lit with transmissions from Boreth. "The Warriors report success," he announced, displaying readings from the Klingon facility. Their synchronized training creates stable subspace fields. Communications range has doubled. Thomas Blackwood led his engineering team through modifications to the fleet's active vessels, installing compact versions of the synchronization technology. On the main display, ships moved in formation, their linked defensive screens glowing with shared energy. Pirate vessels detected near the Cavari colony, Robert Stone reported from the security station. The tactical display showed a joint human-Klingon task force responding, their movements coordinated through the synchronized training network. The pirates' weapons found no weakness in the overlapping shields. Dr. William Foster worked intently at the sensor array, tracking resonance patterns that rippled through space. These signatures propagate faster than standard sensor returns, he said, marking the detection range. We can spot incoming ships well beyond normal limits. Commander Marcus Wright directed the installation of synchronized training protocols across the border defense network. Through the viewport, construction ships moved between stations, leaving trails of activated defensive grids in their wake. James Morrison's engineering corps deployed amplification nodes at strategic points throughout the network. Each installation strengthened the student-generated harmonics, extending the protective field's reach across multiple sectors. Mobile units coming online, Thomas Holmes reported from the engineering bay. The compact synchronization devices activated aboard patrolling vessels, connecting them instantly to the growing defense grid. Admiral Marcus Peterson strode onto the command deck as 5 new vessels emerged from the shipyards, their designs mirroring the artistic Endeavor's artistic technical integration. Our mobile command centers, Peterson said, studying their deployment orders. They'll extend synchronized training capabilities to every corner of both territories. The engineering teams maintained detailed logs of each successful implementation, documenting the precise conditions that generated maximum synchronization. Through the command center's screens, Richard watched as the network expanded, each new facility adding its strength to the unified field of artistic technical advancement that now spanned human and Klingon space. On the main display, the artistic Endeavor moved into formation with its sister ships. Their synchronized training spaces hummed with activity, generating overlapping patterns of protective energy that rippled through the depths of space. The overlapping shields created intricate patterns in the void when Chief Engineer Marcus Bennett's voice cut through the command center's ambient hum. "Sir, these readings demand immediate attention." Bennett's fingers flew across his console, bringing up detailed scans of the shield harmonics. The network is producing energy signatures far beyond projected parameters. Richard moved to examine the data streams flooding Bennett's display. The patterns pulsed in perfect synchronization, each facility's output amplifying the others in a cascading matrix of protective energy. 700% increase in shield strength, Bennett reported, highlighting sections of the analysis. Brin's original modifications are creating a compound effect across the entire network. Admiral Davidson strode onto the command deck, his expression focused as he absorbed the implications. "Establish the Brin Protocol Integration Office immediately. We need to maximize this potential." Through the viewport, construction ships swarmed around the newly completed Colonial Defense Grid Hub. Station engineer Thomas Reynolds directed final calibrations from his workstation, integrating the shield patterns with Richard's teaching protocols. "Testing grid connection to New Montana Colony," Reynolds announced. On the tactical display, a pirate vessel's weapons dispersed harmlessly against the enhanced shields. Simultaneously, crystal-clear communications flowed through the network despite a Class 3 solar storm raging through the sector. Kavor's console lit up with incoming data from the Klingon Science Council. "Time correlation confirmed," he said, examining the results. Shield harmonics peaked during the same daily periods as Bryn's initial modifications. The station's synchronization hub began coordinating training schedules across all facilities. James Morrison's engineering team installed new sensor interfaces aboard the Artistic Endeavour, transforming the vessel into a mobile amplification node. 3 contacts, bearing 047, reported the tactical officer during the ship's maiden patrol. The hostile vessel's weapons powered down before reaching firing range, their crews clearly recognizing the futility of engaging the enhanced defensive screen. William Blackwood worked at the security station, mapping coverage patterns generated by the synchronized training sessions. "Look at this distribution," he said, highlighting zones of overlapping protection. Earth Command vessels repositioned according to his analysis, creating an interlocked network of defensive coverage. Robert Holmes directed the activation of focused shield corridors between major facilities. Emergency response vessels moved through these protected lanes at maximum speed, their passage marked by rippling waves of enhanced defensive energy. Merchant vessel Morning Star successfully linking to the grid, Marcus Stone reported, monitoring the first civilian ship equipped with an automated synchronization module. The small cargo vessel's shields pulsed in harmony with the network as it joined a growing convoy of protected commercial traffic. Dr. James Harrison cataloged performance data at his research station. "Combat effectiveness statistics exceeding all projections," he noted, studying the integration of human and Klingon tactical systems. Construction crews assembled permanent amplification stations at strategic points throughout Allied space. The structures rose from planetary surfaces and orbital platforms, their sensor arrays calibrated to maintain stable coverage across colonial regions. Admiral Richard Holmes addressed the assembled command staff from the station's briefing room. "The Joint Species Grid Command begins operations today," he announced, formalizing the transformation of individual defensive measures into a unified protective network. Richard watched from the central training facility as the next generation of students moved through their exercises. Their artistic expressions translated directly into waves of protective energy that rippled through the growing network of synchronized shields. On his display, the Artistic Endeavour led a formation of vessels through the enhanced defensive grid, their overlapping fields of protection creating new patterns of light among the network of overlapping fields shifted on Richard's display when Master Engineer Marcus Foster burst into the original classroom, tablet extended. "Sir, these readings, you need to see this." Richard turned from the viewport where the Artistic Endeavour's shield still rippled. Foster's tablet displayed energy patterns unlike anything previously documented. "The classroom itself is generating a self-sustaining resonance field," Foster said, calibrating his sensors. "Shield effectiveness increases by an order of magnitude within 50 meters of this room." Admiral Davidson arrived minutes later, studying the pulsing patterns that filled the classroom's monitors. "Initiate full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about these harmonics." Station engineer Robert Holmes's team arrived with specialized scanning equipment, transforming the classroom into a research center. Sensor arrays lined the walls, documenting every fluctuation in the room's unique energy signature. "Performance metrics from connected facilities are climbing," Holmes reported, examining the incoming data. "Training effectiveness has tripled across all synchronized locations." Kavor's voice came through the comm system, Borith facility reporting success. "We've replicated the resonance conditions." His engineering crews had constructed precise duplicates of the classroom's environment, creating new amplification points across Klingon space. Chief Technical Officer James Blackwood directed construction efforts through his tactical display. "Third resonance facility activated in the Kavari sector," he announced. Ships passing through the enhanced zones maintained strengthened shields long after departure, their defensive screens glowing with residual energy. William Morrison's security team established checkpoints around the classroom perimeter. "Critical asset Alpha secured," he reported. Guards monitored every approach to the facility, now recognized as the cornerstone of their defensive network. On the main viewer, engineer Thomas Reynolds guided the artistic Endeavour through its modified patrol route. "Mobile resonance field stable at 90% capacity," he transmitted. The ship's wake left strengthened defensive coverage across previously vulnerable regions. Commander Marcus Wright coordinated fleet movements from the station's tactical center. "Position Battle Group 7 near the Perseus resonance point," he ordered. Vessels moved into triangular formations around the amplification sites, creating overlapping zones of enhanced protection. Dr. James Peterson analyzed the data streams from his research station. "The compound effect exceeds our models," he said, highlighting the exponential growth in shield strength where multiple resonance fields intersected. Engineering Chief Robert Anderson tested the first portable resonance generator in the station's lab facility. The compact device activated with a low hum, generating a localized field of protective energy. Colonial defense units began incorporating the mobile units into their response protocols. Admiral Holmes studied the Grid Optimization Command's latest deployment patterns. "The resonance network is self-organizing," he noted, watching as the overlapping fields created predictable enhancement zones across multiple sectors. From his position in the original classroom, Richard observed the steady stream of sensor data filling the monitors. The room's unique properties had transformed it from a simple teaching space into the heart of their expanding defensive system. Through the reinforced viewport, he watched as another wave of construction ships departed, carrying the components needed to create new resonance points across human space. The artistic Endeavour passed through the classroom's enhancement field, its shields briefly flaring with increased power before the ship continued its patrol route. Reynolds' modifications ensured the vessel would carry that strengthened protection to the furthest reaches of their territory, extending the network's influence far beyond the station's immediate vicinity. As the artistic Endeavour vanished into the distance, Master Engineer Marcus Sullivan burst through the classroom doors, his eyes wide with excitement. "The early patterns, they were there all along." Richard turned from the viewport. "What patterns?" Sullivan's fingers flew across his tablet, projecting a holographic display of layered energy signatures. "Look at these baseline readings from the classroom walls. They contain embedded harmonics matching Bryn's first attempts at shield modification. Even her initial failures generated protective effects." The display shifted, showing comparative analysis between standard defensive systems and the primitive patterns. Sullivan highlighted a pulsing waveform. When properly amplified, these early signatures produce shield strength 15 times greater than our current systems. Station engineer Thomas Reynolds entered, directing a team hauling specialized quantum scanning equipment. "We need to analyze every subatomic particle in this room." The team began mounting precision sensors along the walls and ceiling, their devices humming to life. Hours later, Reynolds studied the incoming data streams. "Sir, the quantum structure of this entire room has been permanently altered. Bryn's artistic activities didn't just modify our shields, they transformed the fundamental nature of this space." Admiral Davidson arrived as the first complete scans appeared on the main display. "Establish Pattern Analysis Division immediately. Reynolds, you'll head the research team." Kavor's engineering crew arrived from the Klingon science section, bringing additional scanning equipment. The Klingon scientist examined the quantum readings with intense focus. These residual patterns, they chronicle Bryn's entire artistic development. Each layer reveals another stage of her progress. The walls themselves contain a teaching program, Cavor continued, extracting data from the deeper quantum signatures. Implementation at Boreth facility has already accelerated student development by 300%. Chief Technical Officer Morrison directed construction crews through the station's maintenance corridors. Begin installation of quantum-synchronized training chambers on levels 3 through 7. Match each room's particle state to a different stage of the original classroom's development. The first student groups entered the new chambers days later. Richard observed through monitoring systems as they progressed through Bryn's developmental stages, achieving in hours what had originally taken weeks. Station security, Chief Anderson established a command post outside the original classroom. All network authentication now routes through this room's quantum signature. Without synchronization to these exact patterns, defensive systems remain inactive. Engineer Foster burst from his research station. The quantum alterations they're creating stable FTL corridors between synchronized facilities. Perfect communication, zero lag time. Commander Holmes coordinated with construction teams across human and Klingon space, establishing precisely calibrated duplicates of the classroom's quantum state. Each new facility connected instantly to the network, strengthening the interlocked defensive grid. Dr. Harrison's research team mapped the classroom's complete quantum topology, revealing an endless feedback loop of self-reinforcing enhancement. The pattern grows stronger over time, Harrison reported, studying the progressive amplification curves. Engineer Blackwood tested the first ship-mounted quantum stabilization unit aboard a patrol vessel. The compact device maintained perfect synchronization with the classroom's enhancement field despite the ship's distance from the station. Through the viewport, Richard watched the vessel's shields pulse with the same intensity as those directly adjacent to the classroom. Admiral Peterson's new fortress stations took shape at strategic points throughout Allied space. Their massive quantum amplification arrays redistributed the classroom's enhancement effect across vast distances, transforming vulnerable regions into protected zones. Richard touched the classroom wall, feeling the subtle vibration of quantum-level changes still rippling through its structure. The room had become more than a teaching space, it was the heart of a new era in defensive technology. Through the viewport, another construction ship departed, carrying the precise measurements and specifications needed to expand their network of protection even further. Through the viewport, Richard watched another construction ship depart when Marcus Sullivan burst back into the classroom, clutching a weathered storage box. "Sir, during the quantum mapping, we detected unusual energy signatures from the storage compartments." Richard recognized the container it held Bryn's earliest childhood drawings, preserved from her first attempts at artistic expression. Sullivan placed the box on a sensor pad, and the readings instantly spiked. "Each drawing contains embedded mathematical sequences," Sullivan said, carefully lifting out a crayon sketch of swirling patterns. "The quantum formations match our most advanced shield configurations." Thomas Reynolds directed his engineering team to install specialized scanning equipment around the artwork. Holographic displays flickered to life, revealing layer upon layer of complex patterns hidden within the simple drawings. "The progression is remarkable," Reynolds said, comparing sequential pieces. "This basic spiral pattern evolved directly into the modulated frequency distributions we use in current shield systems." Admiral Davidson studied the data streams. "Establish early development analysis division immediately." Reynolds, coordinate with Cavor's team at Boreth. Cavor arrived within hours, his eyes widening at the sight of the childhood artwork. The Klingon scientist traced the patterns with practiced fingers. These match quantum-level defensive formations documented in ancient warrior texts. The Boreth facility implemented new training protocols based on Bryn's artistic progression. Students began with simple pattern replication exercises before advancing to more complex shield modifications. Development time reduced by 80%, Kavor reported through the quantum link communications. Students achieve stable configurations in days instead of weeks. James Morrison's engineering crews transformed empty chambers throughout the station into specialized training environments. Each room recreated specific periods of Bryn's development, from her earliest artistic expressions to advanced shield modifications. Quantum synchronization complete in Training Chamber 3, Morrison announced. The room's particle state perfectly matched the conditions present during Bryn's initial breakthrough period. Robert Blackwood's security team established a dedicated vault for the original artwork. Critical reference materials secured, he reported, as automated defense systems activated around the climate-controlled storage facility. William Holmes discovered an unexpected enhancement effect while testing the new training protocols. Student performance increases 30% when exposed to the artwork in chronological sequence, he said, adjusting the quantum synchronized display systems. Marcus Foster coordinated with instructors across the network, implementing standardized developmental benchmarks based on Bryn's progression. The artwork provides a natural roadmap for artistic technical fusion, he explained during a briefing session. Dr. Harrison's research team mapped mathematical correlations between the childhood drawings and advanced shield configurations. Their displays showed clear evolutionary patterns, each simple sketch containing the seeds of sophisticated defensive systems. The quantum signatures are identical, Harrison said, highlighting matching sequences. Her earliest artistic expressions naturally aligned with fundamental defensive patterns. Through the classroom viewport, Richard watched as new students moved through their exercises, their movements guided by quantum-synchronized projections of Bryn's childhood artwork. The network of overlapping fields pulsed with familiar patterns, the same patterns a young girl had once drawn with crayons, unknowingly laying the foundation for their unified defense system. As Richard observed the students practicing under the projected patterns, Master Engineer Marcus Davidson burst into the classroom, his tablet displaying a complex series of overlapping waveforms. These patterns from Bryn's earliest drawings, Davidson said, highlighting specific geometries in the display. They perfectly match quantum anomalies we've detected throughout the defense grid. Richard leaned closer to examine the correlations. The simple spiral patterns from Bryn's childhood artwork aligned precisely with advanced shield configurations currently protecting Allied space. Davidson pulled up additional comparison scans. She was incorporating these defensive formations years before she arrived here. The ability existed in a dormant state until your teaching methods provided the catalyst. Station engineer Thomas Reynolds directed construction crews to complete the final adjustments on a massive circular chamber adjacent to the classroom. Banks of quantum imaging equipment lined the walls, calibrated to analyze the precise developmental progression between Bryn's childhood art and her shield modifications. Quantum imaging chamber online, Reynolds announced, activating the primary scanning array. The room hummed to life as archived images of Bryn's artwork appeared in chronological sequence. Each piece generated distinct energy signatures that the system analyzed in real time. The progression is remarkable, Reynolds said, studying the data streams. Your teaching environment didn't just guide her development, it activated natural patterns already present in her earliest work. Chief Technical Officer Morrison examined the findings with growing excitement. We can adapt these insights to identify similar potential in other students. His engineering teams began modifying additional classrooms, incorporating elements from both Richard's teaching space and Bryn's developmental stages. Kavor arrived through the quantum link transport pad, moving immediately to review the scanning data. Implementation of new screening protocols begins at Borith facility today. The Klingon scientist's fingers flew across the control interface, examining preliminary results. 1,000 youth evaluated. 10 demonstrate comparable latent patterns. Security Chief Anderson's voice came through the communications system. Alert: unauthorized access attempts detected in development program database. Additional security teams deployed throughout the station as Anderson's investigation revealed multiple organizations attempting to penetrate their systems. Engineer William Stone wheeled a compact device into the classroom. The mobile screening unit resembled a medical scanner, modified to detect artistic technical resonance patterns. First deployment identified 57 candidates in the Centauri colonies alone, Stone reported. Another 100 discovered in the outer settlements. Commander Marcus Wright arrived to oversee the expansion of their youth development initiative. Construction begins on specialized training facilities across both territories, he said, reviewing facility schematics. Each installation will maintain quantum synchronization with both the original artwork and final modifications. Dr. Harrison's research team occupied a dedicated lab space near the imaging chamber. Banks of monitors displayed environmental analysis data as they isolated the specific conditions that triggered ability activation. Exposure to standardized teaching protocols during key developmental windows increases successful activation by a factor of 9, Harrison noted, highlighting correlation graphs. We're implementing these parameters across all new facilities. Through the classroom viewport, Richard watched another wave of construction ships depart. Each vessel carried the components needed to establish new detection and development centers throughout Allied space. The network of facilities would ensure consistent protocols for nurturing latent abilities while maintaining security around their sensitive discoveries. Stone's mobile screening unit emitted a soft tone as it completed another scan. The device's display showed familiar patterns, simple artistic expressions containing the seeds of advanced defensive configurations. As engineering teams continued expanding their network of facilities, each new screening revealed more potential candidates ready to build upon Brin's breakthrough. Richard turned from the viewport as Chief Medical Officer Marcus Sullivan strode into the classroom, his medical tablet displaying complex neurological scans. These brain patterns from Brin's childhood medical records, Sullivan said, zooming in on specific regions. They match exactly with our newly identified candidates. The scans showed distinct neural formations, highlighted in pools and colors that track through different regions of the brain. Sullivan overlaid multiple images, demonstrating the precise correlations between Brin's early development and the children currently displaying latent abilities. The biological evidence is undeniable, Sullivan continued, bringing up additional comparative data. Your teaching methods trigger specific neurological changes that activate these dormant capabilities. Thomas Reynolds directed Richard's attention to a newly constructed wing of the medical bay through the classroom's secondary viewport. Banks of advanced imaging equipment lined the pristine white walls, calibrated to detect the newly identified neural markers. First deployment across 20 border colonies already identified 342 children with significant potential, Reynolds said, monitoring the incoming data streams. The screening systems integrate directly with standard colonial medical equipment. Kavor's face appeared on the main display screen, his expression intense as he studied his own readings. Warrior families show highest concentration of latent abilities. Combat training creates compatible neural pathways. The Klingon scientist transmitted detailed scans showing the distinctive brain patterns of young warriors in training. Security Chief William Morrison interrupted, his voice tense through the communications system. Multiple unauthorized recruitment attempts detected in the Centauri colonies. implementing enhanced security protocols around all identified children. Robert Holmes wheeled in a sleek, cylindrical device. Portable enhancement unit, prototype 1, he explained, activating the system. The air within a meter radius shifted subtly as the unit established optimal neural development conditions. Maintains consistent exposure during transit between facilities. Commander Marcus Foster's engineering teams transformed empty station sections into specialized training compounds. Through the classroom viewport, Richard watched construction drones installing quantum-synchronized panels designed to recreate specific elements from both Bryn's childhood environment and her breakthrough period. Dr. Thomas Wright hunched over banks of monitoring equipment in the adjacent lab space. Each successful activation triggers a cascading series of neural adaptations, he said, tracking real-time changes in a student's brain patterns. The artistic capabilities physically transform into technical applications. The deck vibrated slightly as one of the new research vessels docked with the station. The massive ship's hull bore specialized sensor arrays and enhancement equipment, allowing for deep space study of ability development. Chief Engineer Marcus Davidson's fingers flew across the main control interface as he completed final calibrations on the automated monitoring network. Streams of data flowed across the displays, showing real-time neural development tracking from facilities across human and Klingon space. Full spectrum integration achieved, Davidson announced, studying the synchronized readings. The network pulsed with activity as new candidates were identified and existing students progressed through critical development stages. Through the classroom viewport, Richard watched a young student working with projected patterns while surrounded by monitoring equipment. The child's neural scans displayed on nearby screens, showing the subtle changes that indicated the beginning of artistic technical fusion. The monitors tracking the student's brain activity suddenly flared with familiar patterns, the same distinct formations they'd first identified in Bryn's earliest medical records. Richard's attention shifted from the brain activity monitors as Davidson burst through the doorway, his face flushed with excitement. New quantum signature detected, Davidson said, pulling up a complex series of waveforms on the main display. Perfect match for Bryn's shield modifications, originating from the Veridian colony. The information scrolling across the screen showed identical energy patterns to those generated during Bryn's breakthrough moment. But these readings came from a distant outpost, far beyond their direct influence. Kaylara, Kavor said, stepping forward to examine the data. Young warrior, age 7, exposed to teaching protocols through automated systems. His fingers traced the matching wave patterns. Shield configuration mirrors Bryn's design precisely. Thomas Reynolds moved to the adjacent workstation, initiating a comprehensive analysis of Kaylara's achievement. Multiple displays lit up with comparative data streams showing the parallel development paths. Independent verification confirmed, Reynolds announced. She replicated the exact modifications without access to Bryn's final work. The teaching methodology itself guided her to the same conclusion. Admiral Holmes entered the control room, reviewing the findings with practiced efficiency. Expand early detection programs across all territories, he ordered, both human and Klingon colonies. Construction ships departed the station in waves as Morrison's engineering teams began establishing automated teaching facilities. Each installation incorporated carefully calibrated elements from both successful cases, the precise environmental conditions present during Bryn's and Kaylara's breakthroughs. Through the viewport, Richard watched as massive prefabricated sections moved into position. The new facilities took shape, their structures designed to maintain perfect quantum synchronization with his original classroom. Kavor's voice came through the communications system from Borath. Implementation of enhanced curriculum proceeding. Time to breakthrough reduced by factor of 15. The Klingon scientist transmitted detailed performance metrics showing accelerated student development rates. Robert Anderson's security teams established a protective perimeter around Lara's training center. Second quantum anchor point confirmed, Anderson reported. Defense grid effectiveness doubled through resonance effect. Engineer Stone wheeled in a modified quantum synchronization unit. Direct facility link established, he said, activating the device. The air shimmed as quantum fields aligned between Richard's classroom and Lara's training center. Monitoring stations throughout the room displayed cascading increases in shield strength as the networked installations responded to the dual anchor points. Morrison studied the readings with satisfaction. 2,000% enhancement across all synchronized facilities. Commander Wright directed construction of specialized research centers designed to study the compound effects. Stable enhancement fields extending well beyond projected coverage zones, he noted, examining the expansion patterns. Dr. Harrison's research team occupied the adjacent lab complex, documenting the self-reinforcing patterns generated by the dual breakthrough points. Their instruments tracked the steadily increasing power signatures as the enhancement effect continued building. Blackwood calibrated the latest generation of scanning systems, designed to identify potential breakthrough candidates based on comparative neural patterns from both successful cases. Detection protocols updated, he announced, distributing enhanced units to all facilities. Through the classroom viewport, Richard watched as another wave of construction ships departed, carrying components for new synchronized installations. The growing network of facilities would guide identified students towards similar breakthroughs, building upon the foundations established through parallel achievement. The quantum imaging chamber hummed as it processed real-time data from multiple training centers. Each facility maintained precise synchronization with the original breakthroughs while nurturing new students through standardized development protocols. Stone's monitors tracked quantum resonance patterns flowing between the networked installations. Enhancement field stability at maximum sustainable levels, he reported, studying the synchronized energy signatures. The quantum resonance patterns stabilized across Stone's monitors as 5 years of continuous operation refined the network's effectiveness. Richard stood at his familiar spot by the viewport, watching the steady stream of ships arriving for the ceremonial gathering. The original classroom had evolved into something far beyond its humble beginnings, yet retained the same warm atmosphere that once sheltered a frightened young girl. Chief Engineer Davidson burst through the doorway, his eyes wide as he studied the readings on his diagnostic panel. Unprecedented surge detected in the quantum defense grid. These readings. He paused, adjusting several controls. They match Brin's original signature, but amplified. The source of the disturbance soon became clear as a Klingon battle cruiser executed a precise docking maneuver. Through the viewport, Richard observed the distinctive markings of a fleet commander's vessel. Minutes later, familiar footsteps echoed through the corridor. Brin entered the classroom, her Klingon military uniform adorned with command insignia. Behind her walked a small girl with dark eyes that held the same intensity Richard remembered from years ago. Lara moved with careful precision, taking in every detail of the space she'd heard about throughout her young life. "Welcome home," Richard said softly, noting how Brin's confident stance contrasted with the uncertain child who once sought refuge in this room. Thomas Reynolds approached with a quantum scanner, its displays lighting up as Lara passed. "These readings are extraordinary," he said, adjusting the sensitivity. "The artistic technical signature. It's orders of magnitude stronger than anything we've recorded." Lara walked directly to the corner where her mother had once spent countless hours drawing. Without prompting, she removed a drawing pad from her bag and began to work. Her small fingers moved with practiced confidence across the surface. Kavor strode into the classroom, carrying an ornate metal rod covered in elaborate Klingon engravings. The ceremonial gathering he'd arranged brought together key figures from both species who had witnessed the program's evolution. The aged Klingon scientist watched Lara work with evident satisfaction. "The 3 points of resonance are aligning," engineer James Morrison announced from his monitoring station. "Original breakthrough, Lara's replication, and now." He gestured to Lara's growing artwork, where familiar patterns emerged with striking clarity. The room's quantum imaging systems activated automatically, translating Lara's artwork into shield harmonics. The resulting energy patterns flowed seamlessly into the existing network, creating new layers of protection that extended far beyond the station's immediate space. Bryn moved to stand behind her daughter, one hand resting gently on Lara's shoulder as she worked. The expression on her face mirrored the pride Richard had felt watching her own breakthrough years ago. She looked up, meeting his eyes with understanding that transcended words. Kavor stepped forward, raising the ceremonial teaching rod. "Richard Taylor," he intoned formally, "you have created warriors who fight with both mind and spirit. This honor cannot go unrecognized." He presented the rod to Bryn, who approached her former teacher. "From student to teacher," Bryn said, holding out the ornate staff. The metal caught the light, reflecting the same patterns Lara continued drawing in her corner. Morrison's monitoring equipment registered a cascade of synchronized activations as Lara's work integrated with the defense network. The combination of all 3 generations created something entirely new, a self-sustaining field that spread outward like ripples in still water. Richard accepted the teaching rod, then walked to the classroom's display wall. With practiced movements, he hung Bryn's original shield modification drawings. Beside them, he placed Lara's first artwork, completed mere minutes ago. The 2 pieces resonated with each other, creating subtle harmonics that the quantum sensors translated into pure defensive energy. The ceremony continued as Richard announced his official retirement, transferring leadership to the former student who had started it all. Lara looked up from her drawing pad, watching the interaction between her mother and Richard with intense focus. Her small hands never stopped moving across the page, adding layers of complexity to patterns that would help protect countless lives.